Hey, what's up guys? So welcome indeed to the best Hydra builds for Season 20. Now keep in mind, just as a heads up, this is on the PTR as of right now, so things are subject to change. But here's what the new Hydra set looks like. It looks pretty cool. But let's go ahead and hop into a brief little explanation, and then I'm going to go ahead and explain the different builds that you guys can play and the best ones. So first off, there are two different builds. There's a Legacy of Dreams build as well as the 6-piece build. So this is the new Typhon's Veil. It is a Hydra build, which makes it with the 2-piece bonus, doubling the duration of the Hydras and also increasing the number of heads on multi-headed Hydras by 2. So on all of the Hydras, with the exception of the Mammoth Hydra, they have 3 heads, but with the 2-piece bonus, they're going to have 5 heads. So that basically really comes down to faster attacks. And then with the 4-piece bonus, you're going to be able to make it so damage taken is reduced by 8% for each Hydra head alive, and each time you take damage, a Hydra head dies. One thing I want to mention, with any type of shielding, this does not prevent the Hydra heads from dying. Like, I'm sure a lot of you guys have played around with Scorch Necklace before, and with Scorch Necklace, if you take damage, as long as it's shield damage, it doesn't count, and it won't reduce the damage that you deal with the Scorch Necklace bonus. But it will actually make it so the Hydra head will actually die. And then with the 6-piece bonus, each Hydra that you have, each Hydra head gives you an additional 1,000% increased damage. So that's basically a 10,000 multiplier. You also happen to have another set of multipliers with the Magistrate, as well as another multiplier with the Serpent Sparker. So this is basically the new changes. There's also a few nerfs to certain items, and I'll go ahead and go over that. The build that you guys are going to be seeing is going to be a speed build. However, you can definitely play this to push higher GRs, and I'll explain kind of the differences here, which really just come down to some of the skill choices. But basically, what you want to go ahead and do is make sure that this is always at 10 at all times. You can actually perma-stun the Rift Guardians, which you guys will see in a moment. So we'll go ahead and hop into an equivalent of a Torment 16, which is going to be a Greater Rift 75. Let's go and just burn through it real quick, and then we'll go ahead and go more in depth and go over the skills. Usually I like to use D3 Planner for this, but D3 Planner as of right now doesn't have the new sets. So this is what we're going to do. So when we're doing these speed builds, we actually do not need to go ahead and grab any of the bonus damage from Etch Sigil, which I'll explain in a moment here. We can actually just kind of teleport around, and we'll be a-okay for that. And so you'll see most of the stuff melts pretty much instantly. There's no need to cast anything else other than throw down a Hydra and just kind of walk away, and most of the things will die. And in the very beginning, if you're starved for resource, a lot of players were using a Topaz in the helm. But once you get like okay on the resource, you can go ahead and swap that out for an Amethyst, because this build doesn't really need cooldown at all. The only thing that cooldown would provide is really for teleport. But once you get into the high greater rifts, you probably won't want to run Ether Walker, which is what I'm doing. Just again, this is a speed build that you guys are seeing. And I'll show off the speed build, but most people just want to know what the one that can push the highest greater rift does. And you can do rifts in anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes with this build, depending on, of course, your luck.
Still waiting.
And the density and what tile set that you get. But pretty much just keep this at 10. And one thing that's important, as you go to different levels in the rift, is you will lose all of your Hydras. If you come up to an elite, though, make sure you go ahead and pick up those orbs, because it'll make your progress much faster. And anytime you see that the Hydras go down, make sure you just try to keep it up at 10 at all times.
If my old masters could see me now.
And yeah, the Frost Hydra is definitely one of the best. The Mammoth one is used for doing highest GRs, but that one is used for the LOD set. Because the LOD set can ignore the Hydra heads dying, because it just doesn't exist. Well, watch this Rift Guardian. He won't even be able to move. I'm going to step out that the bonus damage of the Oculus Ring. So he won't die like instantly. But anyways, now that you guys have seen the gameplay, let me go ahead and actually show you the full build and go over what the heck you should be looking for on every single piece of gear. So let's go ahead and start out with the one that can push the highest greater rift, and then we'll go ahead and go over the 6-piece build, which is essentially the new set, because Unfortunately, what's topping right now on the leaderboards is not actually using the new set, but I will give you guys a build for the new set because everyone wants to kind of use the new set anyways, right? So first off, this is going to be the Legacy of Dreams build. So that's going to make it so you want every single piece of item that you have to be ancient. This is actually going to give you a higher multiplier, but what we're really looking at as far as what's different here, the helm is pretty much going to be the same as the Magistrate, so you're going to be able to make it so the Hydra's cast Frost Nova. The Frost Nova does kind of help out a little bit against bosses in the highest greater risk, but sometimes it actually can be a downside because if you're doing like a four-man group, you want to be able to group up the enemies, and sometimes it gets annoying and it kind of messes up when the Barb is trying to grab the units and try to clump them all up, right? Death Wish is going to be your pretty much go-to weapon. You're going to see a lot of times it's Death Wish, Serpent Sparker, and Echoing Fury. It's any combination of these. You can cube whatever one that you want to go ahead and cube. But most of the time, people will be using Arcane Torrent, and that's to basically proc your Etch Sigil as well as your Death Wish. These actually have been nerfed with the more recent patch on the latest PTR or Season 20 here. They actually require you to actually be channeling for at least 1 second. Same thing with Mantle of Channeling before you get that bonus damage with these legendary abilities. So it's kind of a nerf, but basically you just go ahead and cast your Hydras and then just kind of sit back and let them do all of the work. But as far as the chest piece goes, extra damage reduction with this one is great. A lot of people are also using the Hirschbrash's Binding. This makes it so your Arcane Torment basically will be costing nothing, so you can sit there and spam all day. Just like any LOD build, the Swampland Waders are going to be your go-to one because they can roll with the primary of an elemental damage. So that's one of your best go-tos. And then for your gloves, you're really looking at Tasker and Theo. That's going to increase the attack speed of your Hydras because they do count as pets. And then Mantle of Channeling because you're going to be basically channeling. Once you get into the highest greater rifts, the gameplay is essentially the same that I saw, which is basically cast your Hydras, and then you're going to be holding this down to again proc your Etched Sigil and your Death Wish. So the gameplay doesn't really change up too much. It's just when you're doing speeds, you really don't need to activate your Arcane Torment at all. But there is also the Orb of Infinite Depth. That's going to give you damage reduction and additional damage. Some of the builds won't really utilize this in the speed builds or any builds that are doing the 6-piece. This is more so for the LOD builds. But another thing that's kind of important to mention is the Ashnagard Blood Bracers. This will give you additional shields, which will help out with survivability. And then for the rings, you're really looking at the Halo of Carini, the Convention of the Elements, and if you're running the 6-piece set, usually the Royal Ring of Grandeur can also be a great option as well. And then Squirt's Necklace is pretty much the go-to. However, you could make the argument, if you really want to push the highest greater rift, you can run the Flavor of Time, because getting those pylons to last twice as long, getting that 400% bonus damage, get that as soon as you go into the rift, and you'll have a great time, and you can maybe get a super fast clear. The boots are definitely optional, but illusory boots help ignore unit collision, so that is definitely nice. For the skills, Storm Armor, the Power of the Storm, so that makes things cost less. And then we have the Hydra, Mammoth Hydra. So again, this is the LOD build, which is right now considered the best build for pushing the highest greater rifts, because it ignores that whole thing where, again, you'd be losing those Hydra heads, which makes it so you will lose out on damage, and you're also going to be taking more damage. But you can ignore that completely, because your multipliers just come from, of course, the new Magistrate buff, as well as the Serpent Sparker buff, and then you have another multiplier with Etched Sigil, Mantle of Channeling, and the Death Wish, so your damage just skyrockets. So there's Explosive Blast with Chain Reaction, so it's going to make it explode multiple times, and this is for your Orb of Infinite Death. And then with Arcane Torment, Static Discharge is an option. There's another one with Mines that was used originally when people were using Bane of the Trap. We'll go into the gems in a second here. And then we're running Teleport with Safe Passage, and then Magic Weapon Deflection, so you have extra shields here. And then there's Illusionist, Audacity, Galvanizing Wizard, and Unstable Anomaly. These are usually kind of the go-to ones. As far as the gems go, they're kind of optional. For the Legacy of Dreams build, obviously you have to have Legacy of Dreams, but optional here. I've seen a lot of people do Bane of the Powerful. This is usually early on in the season just because it's just easier to go ahead and rank this one up and get a very strong number early on. Whereas with Bane of the Trap, you actually have to level it up quite a bit to get that extra bonus damage, if that makes any sense. So Bane of the Trap, Zystone, and then you can also run the one that is for pets, which is called the Enforcer. But I'm just going to go ahead and use the leaderboard because most of their stuff is more optimized as far as the roles go. Most people aren't even at the point of augments yet, but nothing else that is super important to mention with this build. Again, a lot of these will be very similar, but sometimes you'll see people swap gems. Like sometimes people will run Stricken instead of Powerful, but obviously for LOD you have to run this, and whatever you happen to get that rolls the worst, go ahead and put that as your one inside of the cube. A lot of people will use Echoing Fury because the Serpent Sparker has a huge roll. It's anywhere from 450% to 600% bonus damage with Hydra. And so I usually recommend just cubing that as well as Death Wish because this can roll 250 to 325, whereas Echoing Fury, you're just going to have that legendary ability, if that makes sense. But for the most part, people are running pretty much the same. This guy's running Fracture. Oh, important thing for Theory Crafters over here. If you happen to have your illusions cast the Hydra will not count towards the multiple heads, nor will it deal your actual damage. It's actually kind of utilized for crowd control, basically. So if there's a unit that would basically teleport to you and stun you, it really helps out against certain Rift Guardians, as well as just in general, just to have more units on screen so you have less aggro, basically. But like I said, I did want to go over a build that does actually utilize the full 6-piece of the Typhon's Veil over here. So we'll see a few different things, and I'll mention some of the other things in theory crafting here that people were originally running that were also on the leaderboard. So a lot of times it's going to be the similar things for the 6-piece build. Squirt's Necklace, Mantle of Channeling. Sometimes people will equip the Magistrate and they'll just run a Royal Ring of Grandeur, and then they'll go ahead and have an extra slot. So you'd have access to Echoing Fury, which can give you up to 75% bonus attack speed. So you don't have to run Mental Channeling. You can go ahead and instead of this helm, you go ahead and swap it out. Again, sometimes early on in the season, people roll things better early on, and that can kind of decide what people go ahead and equip. But anyways, yeah, 6-piece of the set over here with Royal Ring of Grandeur and then Mantle of Channeling or Magistrate. And then it's pretty much the same as far as it goes, just like you see what I'm running over here. Just cube whatever one that happens to roll the worst. Nothing too important to mention. I'll mention some other things for survivability. This guy's running Time Shell over here, but for the most part, a lot of people are running Power Hungry as well. And like you said, Zystone, Bane and Trap, Bane and Powerful, and also Enforcer are all great options as well. But there are a few other people that are trying out other things once in a while. So you might see a few variances here and there. But instead of Static Discharge, which actually is really good for like the resource, so I'm running Witching Hour for more damage because, again, in speed builds, you really don't need to channel this at all. This guy's also running Time Shell, so this is another option here. But I did want to also mention something that I did see originally on the leaderboards. Let's go ahead and move away from these Hydras because they're going to spam Frost Nova. And get away from that guy talking. So, I did see a few people originally on the leaderboard run this, and I want to mention it. So you just have to be channeling something. Ray of Frost can be a great option because it makes it so enemies hit by Ray of Frost take 15% increased damage from cold for 4 seconds. Most people are running the Frost Hydra, but again, if you're running LOD, you can run the Mammoth Hydra instead. So at this point, do not run the Ray of Frost. But I did originally see some people utilize this over on the leaderboard, so I just want to go ahead and mention, again, since it's the PTR and we're only really looking at the first day over here, I did want to still provide you guys with some of the best builds over here. Another thing that's important to mention is not only you would be rolling additional bonus damage on your helm as well as your boots. However, Hydra is a little bit different. You actually want to go ahead and roll your shoulders as well as your chest piece to go ahead and have that increased Hydra damage. But other than that, there's not really, again, anything that's super important to mention for the build. But now that you guys have seen the build, let me know, guys, what you think of it. I think it's a really cool looking build. I really love how it looks. It looks like something that's maybe from the Witch Doctor, but I think it does look quite cool indeed. But there is the new Hydra build for Season 20. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like on it. If you are new here and you want to catch the new Barbarian one, and there's going to be a new Witch Doctor set, I will be covering those as well very soon on the channel. But thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a good one, and I'm signing out. Peace.